G'day, and thanks for dropping in today. Today's the feast of Saint Boniface. Saint Boniface comes from what many of us know as the Dark Ages, a period of time during which not much literature survives, and there's a lot of misconceptions around this time. What we do know is that Boniface oversaw the mission to and conversion of much of the German and Frankish church at the time. There are collections of his letters to the popes detailing matters of the cares and concerns that he had for this speedily growing church. Saint Boniface came before the Franciscans and the Dominicans, before the great preaching orders. He came at a time when the quality of spoken preaching varied greatly, from banal to superb. But this didn't bother him significantly, and most of his letters were directed towards addressing the ways of life led by Christians under his care. In his letters and sources that have emerged from the time, we can hear echoes of Gregory the Great's pastoral rule, directions for Christians to live lives of humility and other virtues. In fact, at this time it was claimed that the best preachers didn't even need to speak, because their way of life was in fact the greatest of sermons. For Saint Boniface, the pastoral rule of Saint Gregory the Great and the scriptures were not abstract sources. He applied them to each scenario he encountered and remained faithful to the teaching and instructions of the popes. Many say that the style of evangelization that he carried out in this time is the same as that the apostles carried out in their own time, with the only change being that the people were less philosophically educated in the Middle Ages. I think that one of the wonderful examples for us is the Middle Ages for our Christian life now. It's not as though we would rather be in the Dark Ages. Instead, we can take heart in the knowledge of the witness that Saint Boniface gave. Perhaps we could admire his missionary zeal, travelling from England to Rome for his commission to the Franks. Perhaps we can admire his practical concern for the communities that he visited and the way he pulled communities together and founded monasteries to foster the living of the Christian life. Perhaps we can admire how he brought men and women together to the service of one another as Christians. Or again, perhaps we can admire how he carried out the traditions of the scriptures and the great pastoral directions of Gregory the Great and applied them in the most difficult of circumstances and to those most in need. Let's read now an excerpt from the writings of Saint Bonaventure. He says, "Let us not be dumb watchdogs or silent spectators. Let us not be hirelings that flee at the approach of wolves. Let us be watchful shepherds, guarding the flock of Christ, preaching to great and small alike, to rich and poor, preaching all that God has decreed to men of all decrees and ages, insofar as God gives us the power. Let us preach in season and out of season, in the way that Saint Gregory has set out in his pastoral rule."